So we're going to be taking a look at the code used to create this responsive slider. And by default, it is set up on a timer, and it just kind of cycles through graphics and displays them. And whatever the current graphic is, you can see the light in the buttons below representing that graphic that is displayed. What you can also do is click the buttons and go from one graphic to the next. And depending on which graphic is the current graphic and which one you select, it either slides, from the left or from the right. And then if you don't do anything after a certain interval, it continues back on the timer. So that's what this is set up to do. And we will take a look at the HTML. And I should mention the CSS is CSS that you have been using throughout this course and the 180 course. There's really nothing new. Basically, the CSS is dealing with the width, the height, display settings, and positioning. So if you took a quick look, this is the CSS for the slider. And you can see we're dealing with positioning here. The slide itself is using absolute, and the slide viewer and the group are relative. And then there is some styling for those buttons at the bottom as well. And we're going to be taking a look at the jQuery code. And first we will take a look at the code at the top. So what it's going to be doing is executing the code for basically everything that is in the slider class. So if we come over here and look, here is our slider class. And so we are going to be going through this code for all the different slides, basically. So this represents the current slider or slide. Slide group is actually the container. So slide group, as you can see, is right here. And inside that are the different slides. So that is our container. And slides is actually going to store all of the elements that have a slide class. And the elements with the slide class are the graphics. Okay, so we got slide, 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 and then we have slide numbers. So the only place the slide class is used is on the actual graphics themselves, or the containers for the graphics, I should say. Then we are creating a array for our buttons, and the buttons are down here. And then we have an index. So we are keeping track of which slide we're currently on. That's what the current index is tracking. And then timeout is used to set the time gap between slides. So when it's going from one to the next, it's using timeout to set that gap. The function move is being passed new index, which is the image that we want to display. We have a couple variables, animate left and slide left. Then we call advance, and advance resets the timing function. And we'll look at that in a minute. So basically, if we have a new image display, the timer needs to get reset. Then it checks to see if the current slide is the one that was selected. So if I'm looking at this one and I click on this one, That's what it's checking for. Okay, did you click on the one that is currently displayed? And if you did, then we're going to return, right? Because there is nothing to do. Then we come down here, and current index is basically the old one, okay, the one that's displaying that needs to be changed, and new index is your new image. So we're going to remove the active class, and then we're going to add the active class to the new image. And then we are ready to do repositioning and sliding. And so slide left is either going to be 100% or negative 100%. And that is going to be based on looking at the new index number versus the current index. So if the current index is 2 and the new index is 3, okay, 3 is greater than 2, so these are the settings. Okay. If the current index, or if the new index is 2 and the current index is 3, then it's going to change the settings to slide left negative 100% and animate left 100%. So the slide left is affecting the new image, and animate left is affecting the old image. And the direction that the old image goes off the screen, because you'll see it has this sliding effect, right? So the direction that it goes off the screen is dependent on these buttons and which one is active and which one you pick. Okay, so all we're doing is setting values here. Nothing is being moved yet. Okay, where it actually gets moved is in the next two sections. So this section is using slide left. Okay, so slide left is positioning the new graphic. Okay, so if this is my graphic and I want the monkey, I go here. Okay, that affects the direction that the monkey is coming in. And then we've got animate here, which affects how the old one leaves. Okay, so the direction that the old one goes and the new one comes in. See, the old one goes off, the new one comes in. Old one comes off, new one comes in. Okay, so this is what slide left and animate are influencing. So slide left is the new one. Animate left is the direction the old one is going. Okay, this code is putting the new one on the screen. This code is sliding or moving the old one off the screen. Okay, and it's using a setting of animate left. And you'll see this is positioning, right? Left is your position. Here, left is your position. And we're setting it to animate left, which is either 100% or negative 100%. Okay, same with slide left. Then this little group animate also is changing the display of the old image to none and setting the new image to the current index. Okay, so it's basically doing positioning of the new image and setting it as the current one. That's basically what this is doing. The advanced function that is called from up here is used to set the timer on the images. And so first thing it does is it clears out the timer, and then it sets the timer using 4,000 milliseconds. But what it's doing is it's figuring out which one is active, okay, which which image is currently displayed. It checks to see if it's at the end of the array. Okay, so slides.length minus 1, this is the end of the array. So we only have 4 in it. And if you remember that when you go into an array, you subscript in with a 0. So values that are valid are 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so if the current index is less than 3, okay, then it adds 1 to the current index, so it's going to go to the next one. Otherwise, if it's not less than 3, which means it's back here on monkey, okay, then it goes to 0. So it starts over at the beginning. And you can see that when it's the monkey, the next one is going to go to 0, which is at the beginning. Okay, and 0 is less than 3, so now it goes to 2. Still less than 3, so it adds 1 to it. Okay, and we're dealing with milliseconds, so it is going rather quickly from one to the next. So this last little section of code is basically the code that creates and animates these buttons at the bottom. And so slides, if you remember, contains everything that has the slide class. Okay, and then there are 4 things with the slide class. Okay, basically, each one of the graphics has the slide class connected with it. And so we're going to get 4 buttons out of this. So it's got all of the code for a button, and because we're going through each, it's going to go through this 4 times. And basically, it's trying to see if the current item is equal to the image that is displayed. Okay, so is the index being passed equal to the image displayed? If so, that is active. Then it has an event handler, a listener and a handler here for clicking on the buttons. And when that occurs, the move function is called and the index is passed. Okay, so then it runs through all this code that we've already talked about. And all of this is added to slide buttons. And slide buttons is located right here. So this is where all of those buttons are going to go. And then the buttons are added to a button array. Okay, button array.push. Push is an array handling method, and they are all getting added to that array. And once it's done with all of that, it calls advance. And we've already looked through the advance code. So that's basically how it works. Okay, and it's not super complicated once you break it all down. I think the confusing thing is the direction, but if you kind of watch it moving, it does make a lot of sense. Okay, so if I'm here on number 3 and I hit number 2, okay, the old one moved off to the right and the new one came in from the left. Okay, and that's all because of the settings here.